And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 135. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. We were recording this on Thursday night. We were going to push till Friday to give us a game about the Kraken. And then something big happened on Thursday, late Thursday. Something huge. And that is the Bruins made a pretty big splash for the deadline. They get Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway. They also get the rights to Andrei Svechnikov from the Minnesota Wild. In exchange, to the Capitals go Craig Smith, 2023 first round pick, 2025 second round pick, 2024 third round pick, and Minnesota gets a 2023 fifth round pick. Because they retained 25% of Orlov's salary. 50% of it will be retained by the Capitals. So the Bruins did everything they possibly could not to have to retain the full brunt of Dmitry Orlov's salary. But the main thing here is the Bruins get Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway. That is the crux of this deal. Huge trade. Crazy because it was, I could be wrong, but Orlov and Hathaway's names weren't floated out as trade bait for a while. Really didn't kind of hit people's peripheries until late Thursday when they were announced that they would be sat out of their game. Conor, your reaction?
Yeah, I think when you look at this trade, this is the Bruins team that you look at that lineup has very, very few flaws or weak links. They've got elite high-end talent, scoring depth, great goaltending, great defense, great coaching. There's ever, a room for criticism or a place where they could have a little bit more, you're probably looking at additional maybe snarl in the lineup and a little bit more added scoring or, insurance further down the lineup. And I think when you look at adding a guy like Garnet Hathaway, who you hate until he's on your team, lays out guys, physical, also I think is a very underrated offensive player for what his role is. And Dmitry Orlov, who eats minutes, kills penalties, really, really underrated in his transition game. Like he's not this Cale Makar or any one of these guys, but really good at making the first pass, can break the puck out, aid kind of what Jim Montgomery has preached through his offensive game plan. You add those two guys to this lineup without giving up anyone other than Craig Smith, who's a pending free agent, was already kind of on the outside looking in based on his play this season. And draft picks that, the worst is what could be a pick 30 through 32 at the end of the day, right? When you look at where this is, to add those two guys that fill out two of the really small areas of criticism or critiques for this lineup without giving up, guys on the roster, without giving up a guy like Clifton or Frederick or anyone else like that.
For like 5 minutes, people thought was headed out the door.
Yeah. To not, part ways with one of those guys that when you first see that return, you're like, all right, who else is moving off this roster to make the money work and to offset the talent that Washington's giving up? For the Bruins to make that trade without really subtracting from an already great roster that's on a record-setting pace, it's, I think, a tremendous move for the Bruins. I mean, you look at this team, already had very few faults, and when you add in what these two players, veteran, battle-tested, play a style of play that you need for the playoffs, it's, I think, a tremendous pickup by Don Sweeney and the Bruins.
So this kind of hits at something we've been talking about for a little bit of time here, and we get into the trade. As we get into the trade, I remember the past couple episodes we've said how Gavrikov never made a lot of sense because this was like the prime target for people. There was the big left shot defenseman on the market. Obviously, there was Chychrun, but you also had Gavrikov, who was prominent out there, and the Bruins were apparently very in on him. And we were kind of saying, it'd make more sense, and it was more in line with Sweeney's way of work if they went kind of off the board. This is off the board. I got, again, as I said, no one was really talking about Hathaway or Orlov or reporting that those were two names that were on the trade block. For years, we've said, oh, if the Bruins could just get a Garnet Hathaway, or if the Bruins could just get a Tom Wilson. Now, Hathaway's not Wilson, but Hathaway's annoying. Like now you've got him on your side, which I think, as you said, can give Bruins fans and give the Bruins a little bit of it can kind of give them take a deep breath. It's nice to have. But again, I mean, you just look at like you didn't give a lot up. You still have Lowry. You still have Lysell. You could make the case even, and I know Sweeney alluded to liking the roster, which I agree with. I think the roster is set right now. I don't think you really need to add anything else. But if they really did want to, if they really felt the need to, you still have your top 2 assets. So there is that as well. If you really wanted to go just completely all in, throw all the chips to the middle of the table, which I don't think they're going to do. It feels like this might be it, aside from maybe another small move or two. But I mean, again, I think that, as you said, you look at, you added a bruiser on the 4th line who can contribute, who has, everyone's been talking about how he has like in the 1 percentile of offensive zone draws, and he's found ways to contribute offensively, and he's been good
9
defensively.
goals.
Yeah. And then you look at, he's also a New England guy. I think he's from Kennebunkport, went to Andover. So he fits that whole mold that Sweeney usually loves to go after. But then you look at Orlov, right? Orlov's an interesting one. I know you tweeted a potential lineup. He's a guy who can potentially play on the top pair. Can also, I mean, he can really play anywhere on that left side. On D, where do you see him slotting in?
Yeah, that's going to be really fascinating to see how the pieces kind of fall into place there, because, again, it's a good problem to have, because it's kind of the same argument we had with when they were talking about Gavrikov, which, again, that one looks more and more like one where I think Yarmo and the Blue Jackets are like, yeah, we're going to get him. We're, 1 second, Don's going to call me back and the trade's going to be done. I'll tell all the agents.
It's like in Moneyball when Billy's calling all the other GMs and they think they're getting the left-handed relief pitcher.
Yes, exactly. So that one already kind of seemed odd from the get-go, but I think you look at just the way this decor is structured, and Don Sweeney kind of said it best, is that they're confident with whichever guy they put into that lineup. It's not like you have a weak link with Orlov added to a group that has Grzelcyk and Forbert and Clifton, that's already a really, really stacked grouping. But Sweeney said you rarely go into the playoffs with the same 6-man group that you usually exit the playoffs with, right? That's just how the playoffs go, right? It's a war of attrition. So even if you do lose a guy, oh man, we have to bring in Forbert or Grzelcyk or Orlov or whoever else is playing at their highest level, Clifton. It just gives Montgomery and the Bruins so many different options, and it's such a luxury to have one of those guys in your back pockets. So you add in the fact that Orlov can play on the right side. Is he a top pairing guy with McAvoy, and does that allow like Grzelcyk to slot further down the lineup? Does it put Forbert as a 7th D or a Clifton? Is he down on the 3rd pairing Orlov on the right side? Like, you can go so many mixes and matches with this lineup, and whichever lineup you have is probably pretty good. Like, they already decor the way they're currently constituted. Yeah, you already have a decor that, as currently constituted before this trade, was still a key part of why this team's on a record-setting pace. And now you add in another guy that, coming from the Capitals, was averaging 22 minutes of ice time per game, was on pace for 25, 30 points, really good transition player. You just added another key piece to an already strength of this team. So whichever way the Bruins sort it out, you still have kind of those 2 anchors of McAvoy and Lindholm driving that defensive unit, but now you can mix and match, whether it's you keep McAvoy and Grzelcyk together, you put one of those guys on the 3rd pairing, which whoever you slot now on the 3rd pair makes for a very, very good 3rd pairing. Is it Orlov? Is it Grzelcyk? Is it, you keep Forbert and Clifton together? You just have no shortage of options. So a good problem to have, and one that I think when you look at the playoffs and the way injuries happen, the amount of welts these guys sustain over a long playoff run, that's a situation that will sort itself out. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of times throughout this run, for however long it is, where Bruins fans probably like, thank God we have Forbert, Clifton, Grzelcyk, Orlov, whoever. Like, those, as much as it looks right now, like you have guys that are going to have a tough time cracking the lineup, those things kind of sweat themselves out when you get to the playoffs. Also,
I think it also goes back to Orlov brings depth, not just to the right, to the left side, but the right side. He can play both sides. And suddenly, you're not like, might have put Zaboral in or Strawman or Riley. I mean, you have, we're putting Forbert in. Oh, we're putting Clifton. Like, again, I think it makes a huge difference, as you said, in that sense. And I don't see the downside to this trade, even if, let's say they don't win the cup, right? Let's just say, I know I'm scaring the hell out of people. Can you believe I've been saying this? Let's say, right? They still went all in. Like, you can't, you did your best. You wanted to win a cup. You did everything you could to do it. right? And as you said, the first round pick is most likely going to be somewhere between 30 and 32. So again, I mean, this is a very deep draft. It's a very good draft, but it's end of the first round anyway.
It would be one thing too, where like you look at what the return is, and it's very, very good for what the Bruins need. It'd be one thing if it was like, all right, we had to give up Lysell, or even like if it was like Brett Harrison and like another, like maybe not like a Lysell Laura, but another like Matthew Poitras, one of these guys.
Beecher.
Then you're like, yeah, like it's one of those players where like, oh, okay, like there's a tangible prospect that we hope can blossom into something. When it's a draft pick like this, that as you said, is going to be at the very bottom, we imagine, of the draft board in Nashville. I think it's just something where you have to make that deal, even if both those guys are short-term gains. Whether you win the cup or not, that's going for it without relinquishing, key assets on this team. Yes, the Bruins have been siphoning off their prospect pipeline for a while now, but whether it's the fact that you still have a core in place of McAvoy, Lindholm, Swayman, Olmark in the years ahead, Pastrnak and these signs. You add in the fact they've got Lysell, Laura. You add in that they will probably sign one or two top college free agents, as they always do, to just relinquish with a 2023 first rounder and a few other picks. I think the Bruins make that trade every single chance they get.
And then this is all setting them up for trading Linus Olmark. So it's great. They're doing everything they need to do to put them in the best position. So one person who's gotten a fair amount of criticism this year and for a long time is Don Sweeney, right? Don Sweeney's gotten a lot of criticism, and a lot of it's been very fair. A lot of it has been well warranted, whether it's obviously the Mitchell Miller thing or some shortcomings with the draft. But we've discussed all that. Trade deadlines, though. This is another really good deal by Don Sweeney, and it's been years of this. We talked about this recently. He's good at the deadline. He's good in trades in general. Like we talked about this with Zacha. The Hall thing was kind of given to him. I don't really know if I fully, that was a certain circumstance. But I mean, you just look at this, and it's you solidified two birds with one stone kind of trade. And again, like the Leafs did, a two-person trade, but it was two forwards, right? This is much different. This is you get a fourth line bruiser a style of player you've maybe needed for a little bit of time, helps to have on the roster. And you also get a mobile top four potential left shot defenseman. Again, it's another good trade from Sweeney. And now this is you tweeted it out, what he's given up in general for what he's gotten in return. I mean, you have core pieces of this team from the deadline, Lindholm, Coyle, and your Taylor Hall. And so again, I go back to he's pretty good at making these trades.
Yeah, no, I think let's face it. We can talk about the 2015 draft, which is valid, that criticism, no doubt. We can talk about Mitchell Miller. We can talk about all these things that are extremely valid criticisms of this Bruins front office staff, but you got to be fair, and you also have to give credit where it's due. And as you said, Don Sweeney and his staff have done a tremendous job of, acquiring key assets to this team, either at the deadline or in the offseason with Pavel Zacha, that aren't just like, spare pieces. They're key cogs that have supplemented an already really, really good core they have here. It's not like they're giving up a whole lot to get them. Again, let's just include Hall for the sake of doing it, even though, again, you kind of forced Buffalo's hand, but you gave up essentially.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Eric Halla, Ryan Donato, Craig Smith, Anders Bjork, Urho Vakanainen, John Moore, 2 first-rounders, and 7 additional picks, which can be all across the board for Charlie Coyle, Taylor Hall, Hampus Lindholm, Pavel Zacha, Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway. That's great work by Don Sweeney. And even, look at Evan Golden and his work in terms of, without them finding ways to, take off some of that money for Orlov's contract and having Washington and Minnesota retain that, you wouldn't be in a spot where the only guy you're moving off this roster is Craig Smith. You're not taking another, even if it's a supporting player on this team, you don't want to really disrupt the chemistry of this room and the chemistry these guys have built this year. So to make that money work, especially, is a credit to Sweeney, Gold, and the rest of that staff. So again, the criticism has to be valid when it's there, but also you have to give the tip of your cap when it's, on the other coin. And they've done a tremendous job of adding to this team and, going all in with this core that it's obviously in this win now mentality.
And it's supplemented that core. It has extended the window of this core. I mean, I remember we've been saying, is the window going to shut? Is the window going to shut? And it's these deadline moves that ultimately kind of prop the window open. And this year, I think it, completely blows it open, as the Lindholm deal did last year. And it's also credit to them for getting creative, right? It's easy to go for the big fish Dave Dombrowski, always used to, I know I'm crossing sports here, but in baseball, I just go for the biggest guy, offer him the most money, trade the most assets. This is them getting creative. This is, like Mike Riley from Ottawa a few years ago, right? Like off the board type, trade and not having to give up a ton. I mean, I don't know what other interest there was in Hathaway and Orlov. It doesn't sound like there was a lot. It's not like they won a sweepstakes for them. It just kind of like the Capitals PR tweeted out that they were sitting, and then we all kind of went, oh, that'd actually make a lot of sense for the Bruins. And then within like 10 minutes, it was like, oh, they're going to Boston. So I still think like good trade, all of that. Now let's shift focus to what this means for this team. Obviously, we know where they fit in the lineup, what they'll do. The question on everybody's mind is, me and you thought they were good enough to win a cup with the roster as constructed. But I would imagine in your mind, this is more insurance to beat Carolina, New York, Tampa, Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, it's just covering more of your bases in terms of let's face it, it's going to be tough wherever they play. You're looking at still getting past a Tampa or a Toronto or a Carolina or New York. We have 8 more days to the deadline. Like the Rangers could go get Patrick Kane on top of already getting Tarasenko. We have no idea what Carolina's going to do yet. I'm sure a lot of teams are seeing what the Bruins did, and they're like, holy crap, we need to, I don't care if it's future first, top prospects, we need to do something to give us a valid chance in this upcoming playoff run. So it's going to be a tough road regardless, but when you look at just who the Bruins added, it's not like they're adding an extra scoring piece that could possibly help this team, or a guy that has size but hasn't shown it consistently, like the Kasha and Richie trade or one of these other pieces that, in practice, made sense and did address areas that they hope they could improve. Like Garnet Hathaway is the same player he's been for the last couple of years, which is a pain in the ass to play, can add, added scoring punch to your fourth line, and just wears down opponents over the course of a 7-game series. So you add him to Orlov, who covers all your bases defensively, physical, adds more scoring and transition talents on the blue line. It just makes an already great Bruins team, a dominant record-setting Bruins team, even better, which is a terrifying thought, which for what I imagine is the rest of the Eastern Conference.
They're a lot better than they were earlier.
Yes.
They were really, really good earlier. So again, I go back to smart trade, off the board trade, didn't give up a ton. You still have top assets. You still have your prospect pool in place, however good you think it is. It's still there. And the only roster player you gave up was Craig Smith, who honestly needed a change of scenery. Good for him. Go to Washington, play, build the value up for when you hit the UFA market come the season. And obviously, we'll see what ends up happening with extensions for both Hathaway and Orlov. I know there was a report that Orlov had been seeking a 6-year deal and they only offered 3. So again, I don't know if Orlov's going to be in the Bruins plans next offseason, but those are things we can talk about then. Let's focus on the now. Bruins fans should enjoy what just happened and soak it in. We don't know what happened yet in the Seattle game. We're recording an hour before it starts.
Listen, they could get outscored 7-0 in this game. I have a feeling most people are still going to be pretty happy with what went down on Thursday.
We'll say that now.
We'll see. We'll see what the comments are tomorrow on this video on YouTube. But all things considered, Bruins fans should be happy with what went down today.
It's like the opposite. What was it? A few years, 2021, they lost to someone 8-1. Was it the Capitals? And then that night they traded for Taylor Hall and Mike Riley, and everything was good again. I think it was the Caps.
It was the Capitals.
It was the Caps. Yeah. So Bruins fans focus on the trade the Bruins made. Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com throughout all these?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered throughout this Bruins season. We'll obviously have plenty of stuff from the Orlov and Hathaway trade up on the site tonight or this morning, whenever this video drops. So you can go over there to get all your breakdowns, commentary, all that stuff. not just for this trade, but throughout the Bruins season. Of course, Boston.com has you covered on everything that's happening in Boston sports. So whether it's Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, everything, it's over there as well. So please read all of our stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.